Oh my god. Yo.
Black lives matter.
Woohoo.
All lives matter.
No, all lives don't matter, sir. Black lives matter.
What I like most about it is her oh my godding as the cops just walk about their business. These are British cops, mind you. They don't even have weapons. Like, if something happens around a police officer and actual human lives are at stake, he needs to call a fellow officer and explain the situation to him, and then the fellow officer comes in and brings him a gun. I wonder, like, how long will this take? Like, all this hysteria right now, that people are calling Steam a gaming website, okay? They're calling them white supremacists because they haven't changed their avatar like all the other corporations. Which is just a sign of pandering. Like, companies want to make money. They have no problem doing business with China or in other places where the oppression of black people is not only systemic, but it's also enforced by the state. And you're telling me those companies care. Okay. But anyway, there are legitimate grievances, in my opinion, regarding the police in the United States. There are many reasons for it, but like one of them, I would say, not enough training. When can a cop learn the laws when he gets like 2 months of schooling and then gets a gun and a badge? You can have these conversations, and I'm pretty sure most Americans would agree, regardless of their race. They would agree that there should be a conversation regarding police officers. And most people agree that they're not against cops, they're against bad cops. Unfortunately, it seems that the anarchists have managed to completely co-opt this conversation. They managed to use a tragedy and turn it into a vehicle to push their ideology. And if you disagree with them, then clearly black lives don't matter. So to me, it's bewildering how the same people, like I actually know the names of a couple of journalists, that when they covered the events in Europe regarding terrorist attacks, they would say, not all Muslims, and Muslims are the biggest victims of terrorist attacks around the world. And the same people, like the same journalists, are now saying, yes, all cops, and if you bring up black on black crime, then that's racism. In fact, I have saw a journalist being attacked by his peers, and I made a video about it, because he tried to defend another journalist that was just talking about black on black crime. So it's really interesting how the principles just all of a sudden shifted. And the whole ideology is to create a fear and dread into the population regarding police officers. And not just the bad cops, but all cops. And again, like, this is because of the anarchists co-opting the conversation. And it's going to places that are very interesting. Certain police departments are being defunded. And in New York, apparently there are 6 cops a day resigning. And good on them. Like, I don't see why you would be a cop in this current environment. But then you also have other politicians suggesting that you disband the police force entirely and you replace it with mental health hotline to which criminals can call upon. And I guess like the person on the other side would convince them and fix their trauma so they can reintegrate within society. Now, any person from Eastern Europe can tell you why that is left-hearted. I will make up a new word, left-hearted. When something is so stupid, so dumb that only a left-leaning person can think about it. This means that only the wealthy and the rich can now afford security. Because I'll tell you what, these city council members, they are going to have a security detail that they can afford. Most of these politicians live in mansions that are surrounded by a big wall at the edge of and outskirts of society, with video camera, with surveillance, with bodyguards. They manage to have certain lifestyles that affords them to live in gated communities. And they're not going to be dealing with none of this nonsense. They don't care if there's a police or not. All they care about is getting votes, saying the correct things, and playing on the public's emotions so that they get reelected. Meanwhile, the average Joe, the common person, they're going to have to deal with this. And it's not going to be pretty. Because when they talk about police, they will say, well, it's a social construct. And it's like, wow, bravo, genius. Yes, almost everything we have is a social construct because we live in a society. But these social constructs, they evolve. They grow. Just like these ideas evolve like evolution happens in the wild. It starts from like a basic human need, the need of policing, to make sure that people live in a safe area. And from that, throughout time, people realize, okay, well, we have a police force. Now we need jailers. Because what do you do with the criminals until they face trial? You have jailers. Well, now you need to feed them. So you need another institution that prepares the food. And so on and so forth until you get to the modern policing. And the left just says, well, no, this is a social construct. We're going to artificially create something new that's not policing. Okay. There are only a couple of things you can do, and none of them the anarchists really like. For example, in my country under socialism, they disbanded the police force and they called it the militia. And it was quite funny because despite the fact that they changed the name, de facto they were still the police. Like they could do pretty much everything that the police could do. And they just rebranded in order to repackage it. It's quite possible that this is what's going to happen here. So this is like one possibility. Just change the name and pretend it's a new thing when it's the same thing. The other one would be for citizens to defend themselves, like neighborhood watch. This leads to vigilante justice. This leads to the Zimmerman types. It's not going to please the left-leaning person, which is also against the Second Amendment. So the third solution would be gangs, and this is what usually happens. Like you're going to get like the mafia, the gangs, you know, the type of people that do clean up the streets from the common criminal. But you have them, and they are the ones that you pay protection tax if you open a business. They're the ones that are going to push dope onto your kids at school. They're the ones that are going to sell women into prostitution. It's not preferable. So these are the options. That, like the idea that criminals are going to voluntarily use mental health hotlines, and I mean, I suppose like some criminals do it because they grew up in a dysfunctional family and they had a bad upbringing, or maybe because of poverty. But that is like the left's understanding of criminals, which has nothing to do with reality. Like these people are a subsect of the overall criminals. Like a police officer taking a bribe, he doesn't do that because he grew up in a dysfunctional family, or he is broken in the head and with enough love, compassion, and caring, he's going to change. Like there are crimes that are committed out of passion. A husband going back home and finding his wife bouncing on the pogo stick of another man. That is not a crime that is done because he grew up in a dysfunctional family or he is misunderstood by society. Then there are crimes that are being done out of loyalty, as I like to tell people, but I said it on my other channel, I'll repeat it here. The media doesn't talk about gangs almost at all. I guess it's racism to even bring them up. But in the United States, there are gangs like the Bloods, the Crips, the Viceroys, the Vice Lords, and the Vice Lords, and all other type of gang, like the Latin Kings. Most of these gangs operate by a principle of blood in, blood out. Basically, you have to commit a crime, usually a very violent one to get in, because you prove you're not a cop, and you only get out in a casket. Like, you are in that gang for life. If you try to get out, they shank you. So what happens is, like, you end up in prison, and they have a shot caller for your gang, and he gets to put you to do work, which means other criminal activity, and you can't refuse him, because if you refuse him, you get shanked. So these people aren't that they're lacking love, compassion, or understanding. No, like they're very fully aware, and they can make the rational argument that they don't want to get shanked. So yeah, like the left doesn't understand this. And dismantling police only makes it for the impoverished people to remain without security, to have to rely on, I suppose, the community and vigilante justice in order to restore law and order. I think it's going to be a very interesting election in the United States. Like, I don't think that they understand how unpalatable and most likely unpopular their position is. Like right now, they have managed to terrorize people on social media into silence, because the moment you speak out or you disagree with their policies, they will say, so you think Black lives don't matter. It's like, no, that's not the case. Like, most people do think Black lives matter. Otherwise, you wouldn't see all of these protesters. And right now I see that a lot of protests are becoming peaceful with, white people having their hands towards the heaven and claiming that they're going to end racismus. You wouldn't have those people if they wouldn't believe that Black lives matter. And you have a lot of corporations pledging support. I think it's over like 400 multinational corporations now that do business in China and in the Middle East that all of a sudden care about human rights. So no, like, people do believe that Black lives matter. However, people do not believe that the solution for this is to dismantle the police station, is to adopt socialism or anarchy or communism, heaven forbid. And that's where you have the communists and the anarchists going, so you don't believe that Black lives matter. But these people are going to go vote. And a lot of them do notice that this police brutality that is being shown on television happens in democratic cities with democratic mayors, with democratic city council, with democratic governor, with democratic police chief. And this is why a lot of people are infuriated. Because when they see a left-leaning person that votes Democrat saying Black Lives Matter, we view you as a hypocrite. Because the only reason Democrats in America talk about racism so much is to make people forget that they are the ones in charge most of the time on the systemic racism in the United States. And again, like this, when a cop is doing police brutality, it's not the US president to blame, because he doesn't even have much authority on what happens at the city level. It is the city council, it is the mayor, it is the police chief. These are the people responsible. And not to mention, like, most of the laws that make people be tough on crime were passed by none other than Joe Biden. So most people know this. They're not that stupid. Like, just because you manage to tyrannize people on social media into being afraid. I mean, again, it's going to the point where if you do not change your avatar and you do not change your profile and whatever, and you're a person of somewhat interest, you're going to get pressure from the people around you. I know people who work at corporations that are being pressured to write all sorts of statements and letters that they don't necessarily believe in. And a perfect example is at LinkedIn, when most people who were there anonymous at a meeting online were saying all lives matter. So again, silencing people may work. Like, they're not going to talk about it. You just pushed it under the rug, but you haven't really convinced them. And again, the convincing isn't if Black lives matter or not, because most people are convinced that they matter. They're not convinced that the solution to fix the problem is socialism, anarchy, and voting Democrat. So anyway, thank you for watching this. I hope I can get back to making more funny videos. But I mean, there's nothing to laugh about this. This is some serious stuff that's happening. Like right now, I get messages from my subscribers telling me they lost their jobs because of the quarantine measures, because of the rioting and the looting. And it's not that they were business owners, but like they worked at a place that now doesn't exist because it's burned down. And now I get messages from my subscribers telling me that their families disowned them and they're not going to be able to talk with their loved ones anymore. And it's sad. You know, it saddens me. I can't make jokes about that. That's some fucked up shit. Like this ideology, which has been brewing in American universities for years now, an ideology which breaks apart families. You see people on social media disavowing their parents or disavowing their children time and time again. and it's working to destroy everything that the United States stand for, whether that is the history saying that all of it is bad, whether it is the symbols such as the flag, the anthem, or the Pledge of Allegiance. But the worst of it is that it's cultivating a culture where it is moral and encourageable to injure other people or to try to destroy their livelihood if they so much dissent. And I don't even think that's the last goal. I think that once everyone is silent and everyone is quiet, they're going to go after the people that do not promote their culture. So even if you're quiet, if you're not speaking out, then you're part of the problem. And this is what you get to see on social media right now with Steam. Steam is being assaulted because they haven't changed their company logo like everyone else. That they're not like all the other sheep. And you also get to see other people condemning their friends from Facebook or from social media for not changing their avatar to symbolize, Black Lives Matter or whatever buzzword is particular that time of day. And it's disgusting. Like, this is not freedom. This is not liberty. This goes against human rights. This goes against whatever else you want. And it's sad to see that it's happening in America, the land of the free. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.